Greetings, bloggers, vloggers, and followers. Another great weekend here. Pretty much the same, if almost pretty near the same as last week in regards to that, how I'm doing. Um, but one of the topics I wanted to share today is about the unfiltered bluntness. Um, as defined in many people, specifically more towards those on the level one or high functioning or Asperger's, um, we have this sense in us, and it's kind of we don't stop and think, where we just say what we feel and say how we say it, and we don't think about how it may impact or hurt or make others feel, or if it's appropriate or if it's socially graceful or what have you. It doesn't always come to our brain at that moment. We don't stop it. We don't go through the traffic light cycle. We don't think, should we stop and think about what we say before we say it? And I have to say about that is, so a lot of times I I sometimes do think about it when I'm in a peaceful environment. I will think about, should I say that or should I say that, or I'll run it through in my mind, but it's in a more environments where I feel, I would say, less comfortable in, or or more publicized areas, such as a workplace. Places where I'm not as familiar with the with the people that I am not as familiarized with, not as signified or not as close to, is where I don't I guess it's like a social isolation, where I don't talk, but then I don't also say my blunt words. But also, if you're in a workplace, sometimes if you get that rapport and you build up that, that ego sort of sense, then sometimes you'll say, well, you want to say it, you want to get it off your mind, so you just let it go. And sometimes you don't have that filter, and that filter just disappears, and you just let it out, not knowing what the repercussions of that unfilteredness um, present. It can be a very bad thing, if your coworkers are unaware of that. Luckily, my coworkers mostly are aware of my needs, and I'm thankful for that. But there's lots of individuals on the spectrum who work very mainframe, very customer oriented, very frontline workers, and sometimes things are not done to their favor, not done. They're not given the fair shake at life. They're taken advantage of, so on and so forth, to the point where they may say what's on their mind, and may not have may be frustrated at the moment and not have say what's on, and just unfilter it out and just be blunt and tell them something, and it may not look good as the individual, or as the person on the spectrum, or as the autistic, should make it look out to be. Um, then they don't make, and then it makes them look bad, and then in turn, that it can cause some tension. As far as that goes, with the tension, it does happen sometimes between my family members here. I can admit to that, and I can attest to that a lot of times. It does, it does attest when, you say some things, and I've said some pretty nasty things this past week that I won't dare repeat on here, but they were, and they weren't the nicest things that I should have said, but you know, you have to make peace with those, and I think sometimes, you have to learn from those mistakes and understand why. Um, they just weren't that great. Uh, but back to being, unfiltered. That if you're not watchful of your filter, as we call it, our filter, we need to be mindful of that, because if we're not mindful, then it could have some repercussions that we may not like losing a job, losing something like a placement somewhere, or it's very detrimental if we do not keep our filter in check at all times. And our bluntness. Sometimes our bluntness can be it can be a repercussion too. You know, it's just sadly a bad poor thing, and it's just you know you just have to be careful of how you mince your words sometimes. I still at 35 have trouble mincing my words, and sometimes I say what's on my mind, and it hurts people, and it makes them angry, and I don't want to talk to you for a while. And to rekindle that relationship or that process all that trust that you build, to not only have it knocked back down is a rough thing. And that I just don't understand. I wish there was something better to do about that filterness, but I think it's all within how we learn and how we get the skills to learn and having the positive mind and the positive reflect. So, yep, that was it about unfiltered relate and just because we're thinking it, we just shouldn't say it. And I think sometimes it takes a minute, like especially with an email too. If you want to say it, you could just, or a social media post. If you can get to them, tingle them keys, and just say what you want. But I think sometimes you just have to put some thought to it, and not just wake up out of your bed and think, oh, this is what I'm gonna write. You need to give it some thought and some intuition into what you think about it. So with that, there it is, fellows and ladies, on unfilteredness and bluntness. So, like, follow, subscribe. Dustin's Dynasty on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.